Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. I brought the Kindle today because I want to talk about the books that I've been reading recently. But I don't know why this because I can't even show you the covers because I've already returned to the books. They were both Kindle Unlimited books and just didn't have a need for them anymore. So this is just right now I'm reading the book called Courier from Zoe Rossi. It's a short little horror book. I like reading short little novellas every now and then. But anyway, I've only read two books in the past 3 weeks. Almost exactly 3 weeks. Tomorrow will be 3 weeks. Which is slow. I mentioned a few weeks back, a while back, that maybe I've been reading too fast. Maybe that my pace is I'm not like taking in the material as well as I would like. So I slowed down, but not for any particularly good reason. I slowed down mainly because one of the books I was reading was just bad, a very bad book by a very well-known author. And I just was not interested in reading it. I finished it because I wanted to see where it ended up, and I'm not glad that I did. I wish I'd have quit reading it. It was a complete waste of my time. And that book is called The House at Phantom Park by Graham Masterton. Graham Masterton is like a very well-regarded British horror author. Wrote a lot of 80s and 90s horror that's well-received. This book was his latest, and it's trash. It's really bad. The premise is stupid. The characters are some of the dumbest people you've ever met in your life that have no interesting qualities whatsoever. They have no real emotional... There's just nothing. There's nothing in this book. The writing is super juvenile, super puerile. It's just bad. The whole thing is bad. I gave it a 2. I should have probably given it a 1. It really is like a 1-star book, but at least there is a narrative that starts and finishes, so I figured that's a 2. Like, whatever. Whatever. But just a bad book. And when I get into a book like that, so the most recent 2-star, besides that one that I read, was man, it's been a while. It's been a while since I read a 2-star, and I think people commented, oh yeah, that's something from the Night Side. Something to the Night Side was bad, but it had its fun moments. I don't think there was any fun moments in The House at Phantom Park. I would actually rate it lower. It's just, and here's the thing. I read Something from the Night Side pretty quickly because the reason it was bad was that it was just, like, let's take a character that's completely like uninteresting and flat but pretends to be this like smoking cool character and just move them from position 1 to position 2 and then throw some shit at them and then position 3 and then throw some, and that's the book. That's the entirety of the book, and there's no interesting things going on, but it is situation after situation. This book, the situation hits up front and then that's it. There's literally no resolution to any of it. The only good parts of the book, in my opinion, are there is some good body horror. Like, he very well describes the death of a few of the characters, which was interesting to read his macabre writing about the way, because these deaths in this book were grotesque, and so he described those pretty interestingly. But the rest of the book, it's like kind of racist. It's just bad. Good God, it's bad. A terrible book. Do not recommend it by any way, shape, or form. So in fact, that book took me over 2 weeks to read. So of the 2 weeks and 6 days, that book took me like 2 weeks and a day or 2 to read. The second book I've read only took me like 3 days. And that was more or less just because I got a lot going on. Like, I probably could have read this book in a single day if I'd have just sat down and read it. And that book is called The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchinson. This one got recommended to me, And I said, okay, I'll give it a read. Why not? And a couple people are reading it in my life, and I thought, we'll go for it. I've heard of this book. I heard of this book when it came out in 2016, it says. I remember it being talked about because it's kind of a book about it's words I can't say on YouTube. It's a book about a man who takes young women and does what he wants with them, literally. And his sons do what they want with them, and they live in a garden that he has created. This like super secret garden that is that has walls that come down that are soundproof, so that when the gardeners are working in the garden, they don't know that these girls are there, and they're his butterfly collection, and he, whatever. So I remember hearing about this book when it came out, being this kind of like, whoa. And when it was suggested to me, the person who suggested it to me, I thought, well, that's okay. I didn't think you would suggest a book like this. But so I read it. I read it out of curiosity. It turns out that the material around his and his son's acts is not particularly graphic or disturbing. Yeah, they've taken these women and are doing things to them that they shouldn't be doing to them, and that in it of itself is disturbing. But it's not graphic. It's not using that as a shock factor. It's using it as a plot device, as a story device to delve into this character. And I ended up giving this book a 4 because at first I didn't necessarily like the structure. It's told from the future, obviously, I think, right? But it's not told present tense or past tense in a way. It's told like half third person, half first person. The third person part starts immediately after basically the breakout from this butterfly garden, when the girls get saved, essentially. And the story is told entirely inside of an interrogation room where some FBI agents are interviewing one of the victims. And so they will ask her questions, she will give them responses, and then it'll switch to a first person account of her going through whatever it is she's talking about. And that structure kind of didn't work for me at first. Part of it is the character. She's like 19 or 18 in the book, and she's very teenage. She's very like, I'm not going to do what you tell me. Like, and even though she just spent 2 years as a victim of these men, she still acts superior, and it felt a little bit wrong. It didn't feel right. She just acted like she knows better than these FBI agents. She's not going to tell them what they want to hear. She's going to take them on these long pillowing tirades or whatever. But in the end, it worked. It worked fine. Like, it was okay. Like, I enjoyed the structure by the end. I came to it. I came into the character. She ended up being a little bit more well-rounded than I expected. I thought she was just going to be this angsty teen. Like, you don't know what I've been through. Like, come on, you just went through torture, literal torture for years. But it worked. It worked well enough. And by the end, I felt like what needed to be resolved was resolved. And it ended up being a pretty good book. I guess there's more in this series, which is, without giving you a whole bunch of spoilery details in case you want to read it, I don't know how that could happen, but I guess, like a lot of these kind of serial killer type things, there's multiple books about Hannibal and whatever. So maybe there is more room for the Collector character because it's called the Collector series. So maybe other people do, copycat kind of thing. I don't know. But ultimately, I ended up liking the book, and I read it very quickly. I'm now reading, again, Courier, which I'll probably finish tonight or tomorrow. It'll be a very quick read, and I have like 2 or 3 other books saved on here that I've been wanting to get to. But one of them is CJ Box. It's kind of a Wyoming... he's a game warden, so it's not necessarily a Western, but it's kind of a Western. And I've been looking for modern day Westerns, so I'm excited to read this first book of that series, the Joe Pickett series. So I'll get to that this weekend for sure. But and Lost Man's Lane, which is the new Scott Carson book, and I've liked his books so far. So probably read those this weekend. I kind of have to spend a bunch of time with my dad. My mom's out of town, and my dad, whatever. We can talk about that tomorrow. But yeah, those are the books I've been reading, and I haven't been reading a whole lot. I haven't had a lot of time. I've been doing a lot of other stuff, so some of that we'll talk about. Thank you for being here. Any questions or comments about these books, let me know. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is vestigial. Vestigial? Vestigial. It is an adjective meaning describes a remaining sample or trace of something that is disappearing or has already been disappeared. Some babies are born with a vestigial tail at the base of the spine. Vestigial. V-E-S-T-I-G-I-A-L. Is it true? Like, I've heard that there are some twins or one gets absorbed and there's vestigial pieces. That'd be freaky.